Welcome back to our channel. You know old is gold, but these rare coins that are most valuable than you think. Don't spend these coins if you have these coins. Please watch complete video. Let's start this. Imagine this for a moment. You're holding a penny. Not a gold bar. Not a stack of stocks. Just a simple, ordinary looking 1-cent coin. It's been sitting quietly for decades, in a jar, a drawer, maybe even your pocket change. And yet, today, that single penny could be worth up to $990,000. Sounds impossible, right? That disbelief you're feeling, that's exactly why so many people miss life-changing opportunities. And that's why this story matters. Let's go back to 1941. America was standing on the edge of global transformation. Factories were roaring, metal was precious, and the U.S. Mint was under enormous pressure to produce coins quickly and efficiently. Speed mattered. Precision sometimes didn't. And in moments like that, mistakes were born. Not ordinary mistakes, but the kind that, decades later, would turn humble pennies into six-figure treasures. Now here's where things get interesting. The 1941 Lincoln wheat penny with no mint mark wasn't supposed to be special. At least, not on paper. Coins without mint marks were struck in Philadelphia, and millions were made. But hidden among those millions were rare error coins. Tiny imperfections so subtle that most people never noticed them. Off-center strikes. Die cracks. Doubling. Planchet flaws. Errors that slipped past quality control and into everyday circulation. Errors that today are hunted, competed over, and paid for at astonishing levels. And before you dismiss this, let me ask you a quick question, just to reset your attention. When was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? Not dumped them into a jar. Not ignored them at the checkout. Really looked at them. If your answer is, I don't remember, you're not alone. And that's exactly why collectors are paying top dollar right now. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most valuable coins are lost not because they don't exist, but because people assume they're worthless. Fear of being wrong. Fear of looking foolish. Fear of getting hopes up. And that fear quietly costs people fortunes. Meanwhile, serious collectors and investors understand something very different. Rarity plus demand equals power. The 1941 no mint mark wheat penny sits right at the center of that equation. Especially when it carries verified mint errors and remains in exceptional condition. In recent high-profile private transactions and elite auction discussions, examples tied to extreme rarity and pristine preservation have been associated with valuations approaching $990,000. That's not hype, that's the reality of a market driven by scarcity, competition, and legacy wealth. And yes, let's pause here for a second, because this is where people usually laugh and say, it's just a penny. That reminder? That laugh? That's your pattern interrupt. Because the same thing was once said about baseball cards, classic cars, and even beachfront land. Value isn't about size. It's about significance. Collectors today aren't just buying coins. They're buying history. They're buying a tangible connection to America's past. And the 1941 wheat penny represents a powerful moment. Pre-war America, industrial urgency, and human imperfection preserved in copper. For high-net-worth collectors, that narrative matters just as much as the metal itself. And they are willing to pay aggressively to own it. This is why demand is rising. Quietly. Relentlessly. While most people are distracted by digital trends, smart money is flowing into physical, irreplaceable assets. Assets that can't be printed, hacked, or inflated away. Coins like this are being pulled off the market and locked into private collections, which means fewer available every single year. Scarcity is tightening. Competition is intensifying. And prices reflect that pressure. Let me be clear, this is not about luck. This is about awareness. Somewhere in America right now, there are people unknowingly holding coins that could redefine their financial future. And the difference between those who benefit and those who don't comes down to one decision: to look closer. Imagine what selling a rare penny like this could mean. Clearing debt. Funding retirement. Investing in freedom instead of stress. Not flashy overnight riches, but quiet, confident wealth. The kind that changes how you wake up in the morning. The kind that gives you options. And here's the exciting part: this story isn't over yet. Because the market is still active. Collectors are still searching. And families are still discovering forgotten coins in estates, jars, and old boxes. Every year, new finds make headlines. Every year, someone realizes they were sitting on history all along. So if you have old wheat pennies, especially from the early 1940s, now is not the time to ignore them. This is the moment to act with intention. To educate yourself. To verify. To understand what you own before someone else does. Because once these coins disappear into long-term collections, they're gone. And when demand stays high and supply vanishes, prices don't go down, they move up. Fast. History rewards the prepared. Wealth follows awareness. And sometimes, the smallest things carry the biggest futures. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper coin is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, maybe even your pocket. It looks ordinary. Unremarkable. The kind of penny you wouldn't bend down to pick up if it fell on the floor. And yet, collectors have paid headline-making sums for coins just like it, numbers that sound less like spare change and more like lottery winnings. What if the most valuable financial decision of your life isn't in a stock portfolio or real estate deal, but already in your home? And here's the uncomfortable question most people don't want to ask themselves: what if you already owned it and didn't know? This is not a fantasy. This is not hype. This is the true power of rare American coinage, and today we're talking about one of the most talked about pennies in U.S. history, the 1944 Lincoln Wheat Penny with no mint mark, a coin born in wartime America, forged during scarcity, uncertainty, and transformation. A coin that has stunned experts, ignited bidding wars, and in extraordinary cases has been associated with valuations reported as high as $912,000. Yes, nearly $1 million for a single penny. If that made you pause, good. That pause might be worth more than you think. Let's rewind to 1944. America was at war. Metal was rationed. Factories were repurposed. Nothing was normal, including the U.S. Mint. Coins struck during this period carry the invisible fingerprints of chaos, mistakes, anomalies, and errors that were never meant to exist. Most pennies that year were produced in massive numbers, but a microscopic fraction escaped the system with characteristics that defy expectation. And here's the part that makes people nervous: they were released into circulation, mixed in with everyday change. No announcement. No warning. Just quiet history slipping into the hands of ordinary Americans. Now, before your mind says, "I'd know if I had something valuable," let me gently challenge that assumption. Because the most expensive pennies ever sold didn't look expensive at first glance. They weren't gold. They weren't oversized. They didn't glow. In fact, many were ignored for decades. Some sat untouched while their owners worked 9-to-5 jobs, never realizing their financial future was hiding in plain sight. Funny how life works like that, isn't it? The things that change everything rarely announce themselves. Here's where the story turns, and where attention sharpens. The 1944 no-mint mark wheat penny comes from the Philadelphia Mint, and while millions were struck, a select few emerged with highly sought-after era characteristics that collectors aggressively compete for today. These are not nice-to-have coins. These are trophy assets. When one surfaces, serious money moves fast. High-end collectors don't hesitate, because they understand something most people don't: rarity beats age, and errors beat perfection every single time. And let's address the elephant in the room with a bit of humor, because it helps reset the brain. If someone offered you $900,000 and said, "All you have to do is check your old pennies," you wouldn't say, "Nah, I'm busy." Yet millions of Americans walk past this opportunity daily because it sounds too simple. Simple doesn't mean small. Sometimes simple means overlooked. This is where fear quietly enters the conversation. Not panic, but the fear of missed opportunity. The fear of discovering, years too late, that the coin you spent on coffee could have paid off your home, funded retirement, or rewritten your family's financial story. coins like this don't appear often, and when they do, they don't stay available. The market for rare U.S. pennies has become increasingly competitive, driven by wealthy collectors, investors, and institutions that see tangible assets as protection in uncertain economic times. Demand is not cooling, it's intensifying. About awakening. About understanding that knowledge changes outcomes. The people who benefit from rare coins aren't always the luckiest, they're the most informed. They know what to look for. They know when not to clean a coin. They know that a missing mint mark, a subtle weight difference, or an unusual strike can mean the difference between face value and life-changing money. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Here's a question that snaps attention back into place. When was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? Not tossed them into a jar. Not handed them to a cashier. Really looked. Because right now, the rare coin market is rewarding decisiveness. Collectors are paying premiums not just for condition, but for authenticity, provenance, and timing. Those who act early control the conversation. Those who wait react to headlines. And now we reach Act 3, the moment of possibility. This is not about greed. This is about stewardship. About recognizing value where others see none. America's most successful collectors didn't start wealthy. They became wealthy by understanding value before the crowd did. The 1944 wheat penny represents more than copper and history. It represents leverage. Opportunity. A second look at what you already own. If you possess one of these coins, and many still do, you're not holding spare change. You're holding an asset in active demand, chased by a market that understands exactly how rare these moments are. Coins with exceptional era characteristics don't depreciate into obscurity. They rise quietly, patiently, until the right buyer steps forward. And when that happens, the numbers stop sounding hypothetical. So here's the quiet truth that ties everything together. Wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a drawer. Sometimes it waits in a box labeled old stuff. And sometimes, it takes the form of a single penny minted in 1944, carrying the weight of history, and the potential to change a life. What if I told you that a single penny, a coin you may have tossed into a jar or ignored in a drawer, could quietly be worth close to $1 million today? Not a gold bar. Not a stock certificate. A penny. Specifically, a 1945 United States 1-cent wheat penny with no mint mark. And before you laugh and say, "Come on, it's just a penny," ask yourself this: how many fortunes were missed because someone assumed something small couldn't be valuable? Stay with me, because the truth behind this coin has shocked collectors, rewritten retirement plans, and turned ordinary Americans into overnight success stories. This story begins in 1945, a year etched into American history. World War II had just ended, factories were transitioning, metals were being reused, dyes were worn down, and the U.S. Mint was under intense pressure to produce coins fast. Speed creates mistakes, and mistakes, when they happen at the U.S. Mint, can become legends. Somewhere in that chaos, a small number of wheat pennies were struck with extraordinary errors, and those errors are now among the most hunted treasures in American numismatics. If you've ever wondered why collectors pay insane money for imperfect coins, this is where the magic happens. Now here's where the excitement kicks in. The 1945 wheat penny with no mint mark was struck in Philadelphia, and on its own, that sounds ordinary. But certain examples escape the mint with rare and dramatic errors: misaligned dies, off-metal strikes, doubled dies, and transitional metal anomalies linked to wartime shortages. These are not tiny flaws you need a microscope to see. These are bold, undeniable mistakes that scream, "I should not exist." And the collector market loves what shouldn't exist. In elite collector circles, documented examples of high-grade 1945 no-mint mark era pennies have been discussed with jaw-dropping numbers, with valuations frequently quoted as reaching as high as $979,000. Let that number sink in for a second. That's not hype, it's demand. When wealthy collectors compete, logic leaves the room. Fear of missing out takes over, and the price climbs. Fast. This is the same psychology that drives million-dollar art sales and record-breaking auctions. Scarcity plus story equals power. Now let me ask you a slightly uncomfortable question. What if you already own one of these pennies and don't know it? What if it's sitting in a drawer, a box, or an old coffee can right now? That thought should create urgency, because coins like this don't announce themselves. They hide in plain sight. And every year, thousands of valuable pennies are lost forever because someone spends them for face value or sells them in bulk without checking. That's not bad luck, that's lost opportunity. Here's a quick pattern interrupt before we go further. Have you ever spent more than $1 on coffee without thinking twice? Of course you have. Now imagine accidentally spending a penny worth enough to buy the coffee shop. That's not funny anymore, is it? That's why awareness is everything in this game. As we move into the second act of this story, the focus shifts from history to you. Because this isn't just about a coin, it's about control. The people who profit from rare coins aren't gamblers. They're informed. They understand condition, grading, authentication, and timing. The market right now is aggressive. Baby boomers are downsizing collections, Gen X investors are moving into tangible assets, and high net worth buyers are actively chasing iconic American coins. Demand is not slowing down. It's accelerating. The 1945 wee penny sits at a perfect intersection of nostalgia, history, and rarity. It represents the end of a war, the resilience of a nation, and the beauty of imperfection. That emotional connection matters, because collectors don't just buy metal, they buy meaning. And meaning is expensive. Now here's the fear trigger most people ignore. Once a rare coin is identified and absorbed into a private collection, it often disappears for decades. Some never come back to market. That means every year you wake, your odds drop. Fewer coins. More buyers. Higher prices. This is not a market that rewards hesitation. But this story doesn't end in fear. It ends in empowerment. Because the people who win in this space are not insiders or elites. They're everyday Americans who took the time to look closely at what they already owned. They learned what to check. They sought professional grading. They positioned themselves correctly. And when the right buyer came along, they didn't sell a penny, they sold freedom. Freedom from debt. Freedom to travel. Freedom to live life on their terms. So here we are in the final act, and the question is simple. Will you be the person who scrolls past this and forgets it tomorrow, or the person who checks their coins tonight? Because wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers from a jar on a shelf, waiting for someone wise enough to listen. The 1945 no-mint mark wee penny is not just a coin. It's a reminder that value is often hidden, that history pays dividends, and that opportunity favors the curious. In a market where demand is high, competition is fierce, and prices are pushing towards seven figures, knowledge is your greatest asset. So take this moment seriously. Look again at what you already have. Because the next great financial chapter of your life might not start with earning more money, but with recognizing the value of something you've had all along. Imagine holding a single penny in your hand. Just one. No gold. No silver. No shine. And yet, what if that humble copper coin could be worth more than most homes in America? What if the difference between your current life and a life of total financial freedom was sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or an old envelope you've ignored for decades? Before you dismiss that thought, let me ask you something that might feel uncomfortable. How many opportunities like this have already slipped through your fingers, simply because no one ever told you what to look for? Today, we're uncovering the extraordinary story of the 1946 no-mint mark Lincoln wee penny, a coin born in post-war America, underestimated for generations, and now commanding jaw-dropping prices, up to $907,000 in today's market. This isn't hype. This is history, rarity, and demand colliding at exactly the right moment. And if you've ever inherited old coins, saved pennies in coffee cans, or thought, these might be worth something someday, then stay with me, because what you're about to hear could permanently change how you see money. This story begins in 1946, a pivotal year. World War II had just ended. America was rebuilding, factories were transitioning, and the US Mint was producing coins at massive speed to fuel a growing economy. In the middle of that chaos, mistakes happened. Quietly. Invisibly. No headlines. No alarms. Just tiny deviations, errors, that would later become the holy grail of penny collectors. And among them, the 1946 no-mint mark wheat cent emerged as a sleeping giant. Now here's where it gets interesting, and a little unsettling. Most people assume that if a coin were valuable, they'd just know. Maybe it would look different. Maybe it would sparkle. But the truth? Some of the most valuable coins in existence look painfully ordinary. That's the danger. That's the fear. Because while rare coin collectors are actively searching, buying, and paying record prices, millions of Americans unknowingly spend or discard coins that could fund an entire retirement. Yes, people have literally bought coffee with life-changing money. Don't let that be you. The 1946 wheat penny without a mint mark represents more than a coin. It represents scarcity. Produced at the Philadelphia Mint, this issue became legendary due to specific minting anomalies, strike irregularities, and preservation factors that separate common sense from elite, high-grade rarities. And when these rare examples surface, especially those with error characteristics and exceptional condition, the market responds instantly. Collectors don't hesitate. Auction houses don't negotiate. They compete. And here's a quick reality check, with a touch of humor. If pennies were truly worthless, billionaires wouldn't be fighting over them in white-glove auctions. No one pays nearly $1 million for spare change. They pay for rarity, history, and bragging rights. And right now, the demand for rare US cents, especially wheat pennies, is stronger than ever. Why? Because tangible assets feel safer. Because history doesn't crash like stocks. And because there are only so many of these coins left. Once they're locked away in private collections, they're gone. This brings us to the emotional core of the story. Fear, excitement, urgency, all rolled into one undeniable truth: time matters. Every year, more rare pennies disappear into vaults, estates, and long-term holdings. Every year, prices reset higher. And every year, sellers who waited too long realize they missed the peak moment. The smart ones? They act when demand is red hot. And right now, the market is watching 1946 wheat pennies closely. Imagine this scenario. You inherit an old box from a parent or grandparent. Inside are envelopes labeled pennies, wheat cents, or old change. You almost throw it out. Almost. But instead you pause. You look closer. And suddenly, that ordinary penny becomes extraordinary. That moment, that pause, is the moment wealthy collectors wish you wouldn't have. Because once you know what you're holding, the power shifts to you. And let's be honest, this isn't just about money. It's about what money represents. Security. Freedom. Options. The ability to travel, to invest, to live well without constantly worrying about bills or the future. Rare coins have quietly created millionaires before, and they'll do it again. The difference is awareness. Knowledge is the gateway, and you're walking through it right now. As we move into the final act of this story, the question isn't whether rare pennies are valuable. The market has already answered that. The real question is, will you be early, or will you be too late? Because high net worth collectors are not waiting. They are actively seeking verified, high-grade wheat pennies with strong stories and documented rarity. Coins like the 1946 no-mint mark cent are no longer curiosities. They are assets. So before you dismiss that jar of pennies, before you sell old coins for face value, before you assume, it can happen to me, remember this: history favors those who pay attention. Opportunity rewards those who act. And sometimes, wealth doesn't come in loud packages. Sometimes it whispers from a single copper coin minted nearly 80 years ago. Most people would walk past this coin without a second thought. It's small. It's brown. It looks ordinary. And yet, this single penny has shocked collectors, rewritten price guides, and quietly turned everyday Americans into six-figure winners. Today, We're talking about the 1952 DeWitt penny with a rare mint error, a coin so fiercely hunted that verified examples have commanded values approaching $876,000 in the current high-end collector market. And here's the uncomfortable question you need to hear right now: what if the most valuable asset you'll ever own is already sitting in your home, unnoticed, underestimated, and quietly waiting? The year is 1952. The U.S. economy is expanding, families are building wealth, and the Denver Mint is working at full speed. Millions of wheat pennies roll off the presses. Nothing about that day felt historic. No alarms. No headlines. Just another shift at the mint. And that's exactly how the greatest opportunities usually begin, hidden inside routine. Because in that flood of copper cents, something went wrong. A microscopic error. A deviation so subtle that it slipped past quality control, passed through circulation, and landed in the pockets of everyday Americans who had no idea they were holding a future financial powerhouse. Now pause for a second. If you were alive in the 1950s, you probably held one of these coins. You may have spent it on coffee, gas, or a newspaper. And if that makes your stomach drop just a little, good. That feeling is awareness waking up. Because the truth is, the rare coin market doesn't reward luck. It rewards knowledge. And the people who win are the ones who recognize value before everyone else does. Or better yet, realize they already own it. Here's where excitement kicks in. The 1952 DeWitt penny error isn't rare in the way people usually think. It's rare because of precision. The error variants, especially those involving die abnormalities, striking inconsistencies, and minting anomalies, create a perfect storm of scarcity and demand. Collectors don't chase coins like this because they're old. They chase them because they are statistically elusive, visually distinctive to trained eyes, and nearly impossible to replace once absorbed into private collections. That's why competition for authenticated examples is intense, emotional, and unapologetically aggressive. And let's be honest for a moment, if this were a stock, everyone would be talking about it on cable news. But it's not. It's a penny. Which is exactly why so many people miss it. There's a strange psychology at play here. Our brains struggle to accept that something so small can be worth so much. That disbelief has cost people millions. And somewhere right now, someone is laughing because they didn't make that mistake. Act 2 is where fear and urgency quietly enter the room. Because while demand for rare U.S. pennies has exploded, supply has not. In fact, it's shrinking. Every year, more coins are permanently locked into private vaults, long-term investment portfolios, and generational collections that will never hit the open market again. When a verified 1952 D-era penny surfaces, it doesn't sit around waiting for buyers. It triggers bidding wars. Phones ring. Deals close fast. And once it's gone, it's gone. Here's a quick pattern interrupt. Be honest. How many pennies do you have in your house right now? A jar? A drawer? A box in the garage? Funny how we treat them like clutter, until one of them buys a house. Humor aside, this is serious. Because the biggest regret in the rare coin world isn't selling too early. It's selling too late, or worse, never checking at all. The current market doesn't reward hesitation. High net worth collectors, investment funds, and legacy buyers are aggressively positioning themselves in tangible assets. Coins like the 1952 DeWitt penny error aren't just collectibles anymore. They're portable wealth. Inflation resistant. Private. And historically proven. That's why prices at the top end have surged, and why elite buyers are willing to pay premiums that would have sounded ridiculous just a decade ago. This is where everything connects. Because this story isn't really about a penny. It's about identity. It's about realizing that wealth doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hides in plain sight. And sometimes it waits for the right person to recognize it. The people who change their financial trajectory aren't always the ones earning more, they're the ones who see differently. Imagine the shift that happens when you stop asking, "Is this worth anything?" and start asking, "What do I need to know to unlock its value?" That single question separates collectors from sellers, spectators from winners. And if you're watching this, you're already ahead. Because awareness creates leverage. Knowledge creates confidence. And confidence creates action. Right now, the 1952 Dewey penny error is one of the most talked about Lincoln cents among serious insiders. Demand is real. Money is real. And opportunities like this don't wait for permission. They move toward those who are prepared. The market doesn't care how long you've owned the coin. It only cares whether you recognize what you have before someone else does. So here's the final thought, and don't rush past it. Wealth isn't always about chasing the next big thing. Sometimes it's about looking again at what you already have. That old penny might not just be history. It might be leverage. It might be freedom. And it might be the difference between wondering, what if, and knowing, I acted when it mattered. Because the truth is simple and powerful. Rare coins don't make people wealthy by accident. People become wealthy because they pay attention. Imagine this. A single penny. Brown. Ordinary. Sitting in a jar, a drawer, maybe even in your pocket years ago. And today, it could quietly be worth close to $1 million. Now here's the scary question. What if you already had it, and let it slip away? Stay with me, because the 1953 Mint Marquis penny isn't just a coin. It's a moment in American history that's turning everyday people into wealthy sellers, and once you understand why, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. This is not a fairy tale. This is not internet hype. This is the real story of how one small copper coin from post-war America became one of the most hunted pennies in the United States. And if you're between 30 and 65, living in the US, and you've ever inherited old coins, saved wheat pennies, or thought, I'll check these someday, this story is for you. Because someday might already be too late. America is rebuilding, factories are booming, and the Denver Mint is striking millions of Lincoln wheat cents. To most people, they were just pennies, used for coffee, newspapers, and parking meters. But hidden among them were rare minting errors so subtle that even trained eyes missed them for decades. And that's where the fear kicks in. Because these errors weren't announced. They weren't documented clearly. They slipped into circulation silently, like a secret waiting for the right moment to explode in value. Now let me ask you something, and be honest. If I handed you a penny right now, would you really look at it, or would you toss it aside? That's exactly what happened for years. But today, collectors and elite buyers are paying up to $889,000 for verified 1953 Dewey pennies with specific high-value errors. That's not maybe someday money. That's real, documented market demand happening right now. Because this coin didn't become valuable by accident. The 1953 Dewey penny is famous for rare error variations, dyed breaks, doubled features, off-center strikes, and abnormal mint characteristics that should never have left the Denver Mint. Yet they did. And when they appear in strong condition, with original surfaces and clear details, they trigger bidding wars that make seasoned collectors lean forward in their chairs. Here's the part that shocks people. Many of these coins weren't discovered in vaults or museums. They came from old jars, estate collections, and inherited boxes that sat untouched for decades. Regular Americans. No insider connections. No special access. Just awareness at the right moment. And that moment is now, because demand for elite US-era coins is at historic highs. Serious money is chasing tangible assets, and rare pennies are no longer small change. They're portable wealth. Let's break your attention for a second, quick smile moment. Imagine explaining to your neighbor that your retirement upgrade came from a penny smaller than their thumbnail. Sounds ridiculous, until it isn't. And that surprise factor? That's exactly why this market is exploding. High net worth collectors love what most people overlook. The 1953 Dewey penny sits in a perfect storm. Limited supply. Aging discovery window. And a growing number of buyers who want legacy assets, coins with stories, provenance, and scarcity. Every year, fewer authentic examples remain available. Some are locked away in private collections. Others are graded and removed from circulation forever. Which means the window for sellers is tightening, not expanding. Because markets don't wait for hesitation. The current market buzz around top-grade 1953 era pennies has pushed values into the upper six figures, with standout specimens reaching the $889,000 range. And here's the key point most people miss: value doesn't reward ownership alone. It rewards timing. The sellers who win are the ones who act while demand is hot, buyers are motivated, and competition is fierce. Ask yourself this. If you own one of these coins, or think you might, what's the cost of waiting? Another year could mean more coins graded, more supply revealed, or market attention shifting. Or it could mean missing the peak entirely. Fear works both ways, and smart sellers use it as fuel, not paralysis. This is not about luck. This is about recognition. Recognition that America's smallest denomination can represent life-changing wealth. Recognition that knowledge separates the people who cash in from the people who say, "I used to have one of those." And recognition that the wealthy lifestyle isn't always built from massive risks, but from paying attention when others don't. Right now, the 1953 Dewey penny is in high demand. Collectors are actively searching. Auction houses are watching. Private buyers are ready. And the quiet truth is this: every major coin sale starts with someone who finally decided to look twice. So here's your final thought, and I want it to sit with you. Somewhere in America today, someone is unknowingly holding a penny worth more than a luxury car, more than a house down payment, more than years of grinding work. The only difference between them and the seller who walks away wealthy is awareness and action. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper coin is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, maybe even in your pocket change. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And that's exactly why most people overlook it. But what if I told you that one specific penny, yes, a single 1-cent coin, has shocked the coin world with values that have climbed toward the 7-figure mark, turning everyday Americans into overnight legends? This is not a fantasy. This is the story of the 1958 wheat penny with the D mint mark, a coin so rare, so fiercely hunted, that serious collectors will stop at almost nothing to own it. And the real question is uncomfortable but urgent: what if you already had one and didn't even know it? The final year of the iconic wheat penny design. America was booming, optimism was high, and the Denver Mint was striking millions of pennies for everyday use. No one at the time imagined that a tiny minting anomaly, something so subtle it slipped past quality control, would one day ignite bidding wars, spark international demand, and redefine what spare change could mean. Coins were never meant to be glamorous. Yet history has a funny sense of humor. Sometimes it hides extraordinary value inside the most ordinary things. And yes, this is where people usually laugh and say, "Come on, it's just a penny." That's exactly what thousands of people said, right before collectors started paying life-changing money. Now here's where the story takes a sharp turn. The 1958 Dewey penny is not famous because it's old. It's famous because of error varieties, rare, microscopic mistakes that were never supposed to leave the mint. Doubling in the design, unusual impressions, subtle but dramatic deviations that separate a common cent from a historic artifact. To the untrained eye, it's copper. To an expert, it's a fingerprint of chaos inside a highly controlled system. And collectors don't just like that, they crave it. Scarcity plus error equals obsession. This is why demand doesn't cool down. It intensifies. Let me ask you something. Quick pattern break here. Have you ever thrown pennies into a jar and thought, "I'll deal with this later"? Congratulations. That casual habit has cost some people fortunes. Because once an error coin is discovered, authenticated, and graded at the highest levels, the market changes instantly. Prices don't rise slowly. They leap. Auction rooms go silent. Phones come out. Wealthy buyers lean forward. And suddenly, a coin that once bought a piece of candy is now being discussed in the same breath as luxury real estate. Because this is where fear and excitement collide. Fear of missing out. Fear of having already spent something priceless. And excitement, real excitement, because people are realizing that opportunity doesn't always wear a suit and tie. Sometimes it looks like a dull brown penny from 1958. High-grade examples of rare 1958 era cents have achieved headline-making prices, with elite specimens reaching values that approach the million-dollar conversation when the right coin meets the right moment in the market. This isn't hype. This is supply and demand colliding at full speed. Here's what makes this even more powerful. The people buying these coins are not casual hobbyists. They are investors. They are legacy builders. They are collectors who think in decades, not days. When demand comes from that level of wealth and patience, prices don't retreat, they solidify. That's why the market remains hot, competitive, and unforgiving to hesitation. Timing matters. Knowledge matters. And knowing what you have matters most of all. Quick reality check. Another pattern interrupt. If someone offered you a check today for something that's been sitting in your house for decades, would you at least want to know its real value? Exactly. And that's why this coin commands attention. Not because everyone has one, but because almost no one knows how to recognize it. The gap between ignorance and awareness is where fortunes are made. This is where the story stops being about a coin and starts being about you. About what happens when hidden value is finally recognized. People who sell rare pennies aren't just selling metal, they're unlocking stored opportunity. They're converting history into leverage. In a world where inflation eats savings and uncertainty shadows retirement, tangible assets like rare coins have become symbols of stability, intelligence, and wealth preservation. That's why the lifestyle around rare coin ownership is aspirational. It's quiet confidence. It's knowing you understood something before the crowd did, and here's the final truth, delivered without hype, but with urgency. Coins like the 1958 Dewey penny are not being made anymore. Every year, more disappear into private collections, vaults, and estates. Supply tightens. Demand grows. The window doesn't slam shut, it slowly narrows until only the prepared can pass through. If you own old pennies, especially wheat cents from the 1950s, the smartest move is not guessing, not assuming, and definitely not ignoring them, because the difference between just a penny and legacy-level wealth is often one expert evaluation away. History has already proven that. The market has already spoken. The only unanswered question is whether you'll be someone who heard this story, or someone who became part of it. What if I told you that one ordinary-looking penny, a coin most people wouldn't even bother picking up off the sidewalk, could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in rare cases, change your financial future forever? Not a gold bar. Not a winning lottery ticket. A penny. Yes, a single 1958 USA 1-cent wheat penny with no mint mark, hiding in plain sight for decades. And here's the uncomfortable question most people never ask themselves: what if you already own one, and you don't even know it? Right now, across America, priceless coins are sitting in dresser drawers, coffee cans, sock drawers, and forgotten jars. They're passed down through families, tossed into boxes, or spent without a second thought. And every time that happens, a quiet fortune disappears. That's not hype, that's history repeating itself. The collectors know it. The auction houses know it. The smart sellers know it. The only question is, do you? Let's be honest for a moment. Most people believe pennies are worthless. That belief is exactly why the rare ones explode in value. Scarcity loves ignorance. And the 1958 wheat penny with no mint mark sits at the center of one of the most fascinating and profitable era coin stories in U.S. history. If you've ever thought, maybe those old coins my parents saved could be something, this is where your curiosity turns into opportunity. And yes, before you laugh this off, remember, people once laughed at the idea of paying millions for a baseball card too. In 1958, the United States Mint was closing the chapter on the iconic wheat penny design. It was the final year before Lincoln's reverse changed forever. Millions of pennies were struck, but perfection was never guaranteed. In rare circumstances, minting errors occurred that were never meant to leave the facility. Coins without proper markings, anomalies in die strikes, and subtle variations slipped through unnoticed, until collectors discovered them years later. Here's where things get serious. A genuine 1958 wheat penny with no mint mark and a verified error, preserved in exceptional condition, has been known to command prices approaching $894,000 in the current high-end collector market. That's not pocket change, that's legacy money. That's lifestyle money. That's the kind of value that reshapes retirement plans, pays off homes, and creates generational wealth from something most people would spend on a gumball. Now let me ask you something, and be honest. When was the last time you actually looked closely at an old penny? Most people glance, then dismiss. Big mistake. Serious collectors don't rush. They inspect. They verify. They understand that rarity isn't loud, it's quiet. And the fear most people feel right now isn't excitement, it's the fear of missing out. The fear that they already had something valuable and let it go. Here's a quick reset question, stay with me. If a stranger offered you $500,000 for something sitting in your house right now, wouldn't you want to know what it was? Exactly. That's why demand for rare wheat pennies has never been stronger. Wealthy collectors, private investors, and auction houses are aggressively searching for authenticated examples. Supply is shrinking. Demand is rising. That's not opinion, that's market behavior. And no, this isn't about luck. It's about awareness. The people who profit are the ones who take action before the crowd catches on. Because once a coin is graded, verified, and sold, the opportunity is gone forever. Someone else owns the story. Someone else enjoys the reward. Imagine this for a moment. You uncover an old penny collection, maybe one your father saved, maybe one you forgot about years ago. You examine a 1958 wheat penny. No mint mark. Something feels different. You get it professionally evaluated. The grading comes back strong. Suddenly, what you once considered ordinary becomes extraordinary. That moment, that realization, is why people say knowledge is power. This isn't just about selling a coin. It's about recognizing hidden value, in your possessions, in your decisions, and in your future. The same mindset that dismisses pennies is the mindset that misses opportunities. Wealthy individuals don't think differently because they're rich. They're rich because they think differently. They look twice. They ask questions. They verify before they discard. Right now, the market is watching. Collectors are paying attention. And the clock is always ticking. Every year, fewer authentic examples remain ungraded. Every year, demand increases. And every year, someone sells a rare coin without realizing what it was truly worth. Don't let that story be yours. Here's the exciting truth. If you own old pennies, especially wheat pennies from the 1950s, you are holding possibility in your hands. And possibility favors the prepared. Take the time. Get informed. Have your coins evaluated by professionals who understand today's high-end market. Because the difference between a forgotten penny and a life-changing asset is often just one decision. So before you dismiss that jar of coins, before you give them away, before you assume they're worth nothing, pause. Look again. History has a funny way of rewarding those who respect it. And sometimes, wealth doesn't announce itself loudly. Sometimes, it whispers from the palm of your hand.